Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and of course, all of you that are able to take part in this show live are the co-hosts of this show. And today is our last, not last forever, but our last series of talking about the OSR versus Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and my opinions on why we have such a large fandom growing for wanting to experience what the OSR is. The old school revival, renaissance, or whatever you want to describe it as. This shorter, smaller, more simple mechanics, and many of the features that the OSR or that style of play brings to people who have experienced 5th edition and many other role-playing games. And so, granted, I am a fan of the OSR. It's not the only types of games I like, but I'm just relating to others and maybe even giving voice to why there's a desire for people who are pulled into the OSR and this type of gaming, and maybe making you think about whether you agree or not. Maybe is this the kind of gaming style that you like or would like to kind of introduce to your gaming group, or introduce to the kind of game that you play, or maybe it's something you don't like, but I just want to give some voice to it. So today we are going to talk about spectacle creep, and it has many iterations of it. I'm using the term spectacle creep. I'm sure you out there have had reference to this term in other manners, whether it's through literature or graphic novels, movies, television shows, and things of that nature. But we're going to use the term spectacle creep as it relates to tabletop role-playing games. And so we're going to go to Urban Dictionary first, and then hopefully I won't get dinged on this. We're going to go to the YouTube channel Extra Credit, and they kind of do a little anime thing, and they talk about spectacle creep as well. But let's head over to Urban Dictionary and see what it says in terms of what spectacle creep is, and then we will talk about how spectacle creep creeps into our tabletop role-playing games, and what we can do about it. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can see this very clearly, but I'm going to read it out. And Urban Dictionary defines spectacle creep as this: a phenomenon occurring when the creators of certain media franchise in games, movies, comics, etc. try to keep things fresh and interesting by unwisely making everything bigger, better, and more spectacular. This can lead to the feeling that everything up to that point didn't really have a point, or that everything after this point is pointless since it's just so ridiculously over the top. And this idea of spectacle creep is very much related to level-based games. We often it can also be referred to as zero to hero, and as an example of something I saw in a video game is I was watching my brother-in-law. He was playing God of War, one of the early God of Wars, and in that game he's playing Kratos, and he has to go up against the big bad, which is a Medusa, and he's traveling around, he's gathering different items and things like that because he has to defeat Medusa. Well, after he defeats, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool, and he defeats Medusa, and he has to, I believe one of the big bads was like a Minotaur that was super tough, and he defeats the Minotaur, and he gets to Medusa, and he defeats Medusa, cuts her head off. And in the game, now Kratos has Medusa's head. And Medusa's head, he can hold up Medusa's head. And we've seen this in portrayed in movies and such, where if someone has Medusa's head in a bag, you pull the head out and simply showing her dead head, holding, fingers entangled in her serpentine hair, that it can turn other people to stone. And in the game, he could freeze enemies and strike those enemies. But when he moved on in the game, all of a sudden, there's like dozens of minotaurs that he's striking down because Kratos got badder. Became more of a badass. So he's fighting more minotaurs, and then there are more Medusas in the game. And I'm like, well, that kind of made the last part of the game a little bit like uneventful, because now it's really common. And you hear this, it's strange because in fantasy D20 games, Dungeons and Dragons, all of its branching iterations, you hear people say, well, I don't want to play low levels because I'm tired of fighting the kobolds, the orcs, the goblins, the giant rats. I want to be more of a hero. I want to high levels. But if you look at any iteration of a survey, you'll find that most players play in the lower to mid range, very rarely going into the double digits in terms of their gaming experience. Now, one of those reasons is because a lot of those zero to hero games peter out, and if you're trying to play consistently, they don't get very high. And you hear complaints about people saying, well, why doesn't the gaming industry make more high level adventuring? And one of those complaints can be that the balances in terms of very high level gaming isn't really there. But I would also say that there does become a point at which the spectacle creeps into our tabletop role-playing games, meaning like you go from being challenged by orc raiders to wiping the floor up with them. So what do we have to do? We have to make bigger stakes, and cities are challenged, and now nations are challenged, and now worlds are challenged, and now the multiverse is challenged, and it's difficult to come back from that. As a matter of fact, we have a perfect example of a multi-billion-dollar industry where on average each Marvel movie was earning $1 billion a movie if you averaged out the cost of even the ones that dipped below that, and you added the ones that went above it. It was like $1 billion a movie, 25 movies in the making, to end up with the double-sided Infinity War and Endgame movies. And at the end of that point, there was this thing of, well, what happens next? What's the bigger threat? And comic book fans like myself out there were talking about, well, it's got to be Galactus. It's got to be something that, if it's going to threaten the whole universe, what's bigger than that? It's got to be bigger and badder. And then we get movies that are about, like, saving a neighborhood or a family or a heist or whatever, and it feels like a letdown. And unfortunately, when it comes to spectacle creep, it does feel like this definition that the unwise thing of making things bigger and better and more spectacular makes it feel like everything before that was pointless, and that everything from that point forward is pointless because it's quite a bit ridiculous. I came from the era of AD&D and the Beckme era, and they put out a book called Deities and Demigods, and they decided to stat the gods out. And I remember we brought that book home with our gaming group, and the first thing the players wanted to do is challenge the gods and fight the gods. And I remember running a game where one of the players wanted to fight Ares, and my brain kind of shut off, like, well, what's the point? Like, where do you go from here? And the OSR has solves this issue in some ways. So let me continue to talk a little bit more about spectacle creep in terms of the monsters and the enemies, and even the descriptions of the types of big bad evils that we see in fantasy gaming. Many times, we have classifications of like the minions, the cannon fodder characters. They just get wiped. They get wiped up by the players. They cut them down like slicing down wheat. And then you have your mid-level characters, or NPCs and adversaries and such. They're like your lieutenants and such. And they always have some kind of descriptor to their name, such as boss or captain or chieftain or leader or commander or something of that nature. Some of these monsters and such are just a bigger version of the smaller monsters. Mummy Lord, Vampire Lord, um, uh, dragons coming in adolescent to adult to ancient worm and such. It is a little bit. They're just bigger versions of the ones below, and then you we get to the point where, okay, now we just have to add multiples in there. I remember playing Dungeons and Dragons where it wasn't just one dragon; we had to have like 7 dragons because we had power gamed ourselves up so high that, well, you can't just have a bigger dragon; you got to have like more of them, and it starts to. It's like uh, the ninja ratio. That the capabilities of ninjas are inversely proportional to the number of ninjas available, and the more you start adding greater numbers of these dangers, the less impactful they become. It's not just one pit fiend, it's 15 pit fiends. Well, number 8 kind of fades in the background because number 8's got a really great backstory and a name and motivation, but nobody cares because there's 15 of them. You just group them, hey, group all the hit points together, whatever, area effect, and eventually it goes from less impact, and it feels like wanting to move on to the next scene because the battles start to drag on. And one of the band-aids to that spectacle creep are more hit points. It's just like, it's either more hit points or so many bonuses that you're rolling a d20 over and over again to get that 5%, to roll a 20 or a 19 or a 20, maybe 10% chance of actually having something happen. Everything in between is just null and void. Nothing really happens. You miss, which really isn't missing. It's you go to strike, but your strike isn't effective. You cast a spell, and then it's just ignored, countered. I hit it, do damage. Well, it's got 780 hit points, and I'm doing 30 to 50 at a time. So I'm just whittling, and there's nothing happening. So how does the OSR solve this problem? And one of these solutions to the OSR solving this problem, strangely enough, is one of the solutions is actually going the opposite direction. So first of all, in the OSR, and there are games that are not OSR specifically, but still embrace this part of what the OSR does. And that is, there is a, hey, negative space. Thank you for being here. One of the concepts that the OSR embraces is slow growth. So you don't really often see extremely high levels or power levels happening in the OSR. The growth is slow, and that's one method of tapping down the spectacle creep, that some of the enemies they are still dangers in a longer period of time in a character's experience. Even as the characters are gaining levels, they're still threats that are presented to the player characters. For example, in the OSR, if you're following this, there's a lot more, and I'm going to get to the second point, there's a lot more resource management. Now, yes, some resource management is a pain in the ass, and no one does it. Counting weight, ounces and pounds, kilograms of carrying on your character, maybe not that deep, but slots on character, how many objects can you carry in your backpack, sometimes keeping track of ammo. Sometimes the keeping track of ammo might be a random, like a usage die, if you guys know the black hack, where you roll a die at the end of a battle to see if you have ammo left. There are recovering ammo rules sometimes where you roll a die and see what percentage of your ammo can you get back, like arrows and bolts and sling stones and things like that. Also, resource management in terms of shelter, food, drink, and those are still threats depending on how those that play in the OSR, they still use those threats as going, listen, we are slowly gaining power because the threats of all the things previously are still dangerous to us. Maybe 5 orcs isn't as dangerous to us at 7th level as 3rd, but it's still a danger. A couple of good die rolls and we're gone. Even some of those minor monsters have dangerous effects, like ghouls paralyzing you for a minute of time, and that's a lot of time when you have very short rounds of combat. Many of them have other aspects like poisons and petrification and such that are so lethal to progressing in the game, taking players out seemingly permanently, that it's still a threat. So many monsters in OSR are still threats, and therefore there's no need to increase the spectacle because you still have the threats from the mid-level and low-level ranges. Another thing about resource management is not just about food. I know people think about ammo and food and having to worry about that, and that's important. I bring up Dark Sun as a setting that people absolutely positively love, and those people that love Dark Sun aren't necessarily OSR players, but they want Dark Sun. Why? Because Dark Sun is about resource management, is about limitations, and in a weird way, it's instead of starting from zero, it's like starting from negative. We don't have access to water. We don't have access to shelter. We have to make a hard decision. Do I carry more coin or valuables with me, or do I carry more food and water with me? It's making those hard decisions. And in the OSR, because it's difficult for you to carry all this crap around with you and just it's in a bag of holding, we're just going to ignore carrying capacity. It's not even about spectacle going up. It's more breadth of resources. I can only hold 12 items. I'm going to have to give up one useful thing because, let's say something I use in a desert, because now we're going into an aquatic realm. We're sailing on ships around archipelagos, and so it's more transitioning. I'm going to give up 3 items that I needed in the desert, and now I need 3 more items because we're going to be doing an overseas adventure. The spectacle doesn't go up; it's just transitioning parallel. It's a flat transition. Instead of a vertical transitioning of getting higher level, it's a transition horizontally to a different mode of play. And the OSR really embraces that as well. Oh, we're going to go into a haunted realm where we're really going to need holy water, silver, blessed items, things like that. Hey, we're going to need henchmen that are of the faith and a sage and a healer going into this horror realm. Whereas then you transfer over into a swamp, and we're going to need guides to go through the swamp, and we're going to need shallow hull boats and ways to see in the darkness, and things to resist acids and poisons, and it's just a transition over into another realm of gameplay. Deep diving into caves and dungeons is different than overland travel, and so that keeps the spectacle creep down as well. Also, this is a really strange thing, and I was trying to figure out mentally before we started how to describe flat storytelling, and it sounds horrible the way I'm describing it, so I apologize, which is why I like long form discussions. One of the things the OSR has really embraced, instead of small community, village, town, nation, continent, world, whole plane of existence getting threatened over and over. And mind you, this does exist in the OSR. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all. I'm saying it's just a slower rise. There's also this idea of flat gaming. And I don't know if anyone's described it this way, and I wish I had a more positive descriptor for flat gaming. But one way it was described on Questing Beast, Ben Bilton's channel Questing Beast, who seems to be one of a large number of pioneers in supporting the OSR specifically, talks about location adventuring. And the OSR sphere, while there are some really great creators, tends not to have those pinnacle settings like Dark Sun or Planescape or Spelljammer. There are ones like Mystara and Greyhawk, and there are others out there, but for the most part, the OSR embraces like building your own worlds. And a lot of time, it's really not about stories in which the heroes are getting better and better and they're saving a bigger nation. It's location, region, area, adventuring. And what I mean by that about flat gaming is we're going into the mountains and we're going to adventure in the mountains, and nothing extends out from those mountains or intrudes on those mountains. We're going to go to a mountainous realm. There are caves and dwarves and there's an adventure in there, and we're just going to go there and have an adventure. Now, we might deal with NPCs and factions. We may delve deep into caves that are formed from natural construction and monsters that have burrowed their way through the tunnels, and that's what we're going through. We may go through sculpted regions that have been dug out by gnomes and dwarves centuries beforehand. We may find hidden crypts down in the mountains, but when we leave the mountains, we're done, because we're going on to another location. In some ways, it's almost like hex crawling, where the OSR goes, and this is how old games were designed. We would buy something known as a module. Today, the term adventure path has been used, or campaign books, but back in the day, they were modules. These were flimsies. Flimsies mean you could just bend them up, and the actual inside cover was usually the maps or handouts. And the idea was that while there were references to places like Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Mystara, I'm trying to think of it, Blackmoor? You guys correct me or throw them into the comments or chat, whatever. Some of these other old school worlds. The idea was that these modules, just place them in your world anywhere. Hey, I'm gonna bring up the Isle of Dread. I keep picking with the Isle of Dread, but I do this on purpose. There might be the Isle of Dread, and it didn't matter what your world was like. The Isle of Dread was an island that was found semi-prehistoric. Go there, have an adventure, leave the island, you're done. Oh, this adventure is in the White Plume Mountain. Guess what? You place that mountain anywhere in your game world, your setting, your map. You don't even have to have a map. It's to the north. It's got a big white plume off of it. Go into the mountain. Fine. The Tomb of Horrors. The Tomb of Horrors could be anywhere in anyone's world, anyone's game. And adventuring was basically, we are location adventuring, and we are flat adventuring, meaning maybe we did go to the Isle of Dread and we came back from it. But it's not about the Isle of Dread being connected to this bigger storyline that's going to affect all these other things. No. Now, sure, great storytellers and game masters and players may bring with them some elements of the Isle of Dread. Maybe there's nobles who want to know about the treasures that were found there and the rumors, and maybe some of the enemies followed some of the players back on land, but that really wasn't the case. You go to a desert, you do the desert adventure, flat. You leave, you go to someplace else, and it was location-based gaming. Players will poke and prod. Talked about this, the article from the Alexandrian, where players start out with curiosity. Hey, what's around this area? What's here? What rumors do we hear? Then they start searching for things. Oh, we've heard 5, 6, 7 rumors about an accursed tomb. Yes, evils are coming out and hurting people, so it's a benefit for us to help them out as well. Let's go to this accursed tomb. They search for the tomb, and then they start trailblazing. How do we get there? How do we navigate into the tomb? What do we need? What kind of supplies do we need? What kind of henchmen? We go into the tomb. The adventure happens in the tomb. It ends at some point in the future with the gaming. Hey, we're done with the tomb. Let's go south. Let's go east. Now, there might be some story hooks involved. Hey, adventurers, person stumbles in, old or hurt or injured. I need your help. Hand players a story hook MacGuffin with a map in a bloody hand. Players open up map. Guess what? Story hook. Let's go. Hooked on the mouth. And they go. And I'm using the term flat storytelling, but it was basically like procedural television shows. If you guys ever watch procedural television shows, medical, legal, police, rescue, for the most part, those are procedural sometimes business, procedural shows. We have a bunch of characters. Their lives don't change too much, and they use procedures to engage in what's happening in the world. A legal proceeding, a criminal investigation, saving someone's life that's coming into the emergency room. And at the end of it, through success or not, the characters figure the thing out. But the next procedure is flat. They are waiting in the emergency room for the next emergency to come through. And yes, some of them have family drama. Some of them risk their jobs and get fired or promoted and whatnot. But that cycle the hospital never burns down, right? The law firm doesn't get sued out of existence and no one leaves until the very end of the show, okay? Characters that change their careers, they don't stay on the show, they leave. We don't see them again, because we're concerned with the procedural. And the OSR really embraces this, accepts the idea of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We're just going to go to a different city. And sometimes the storylines are attached, but it's not necessary. We're going to have location-based adventuring. So, yeah. Mike Marin says, I've been lucky enough to run campaigns for a group of 8. Okay. Campaigns for a group for 8 years. Wow. That's very rare. I'm letting you know right now that's very rare. So now I reference old locations, enemies, and items in a similar way, as if they were Dark Sun or Bavaria, right? And I'm all for, listen, because I know you have limited comments here. Oh shit, you put it in here. I apologize. I glanced at the comment. Normally I read the comments while I'm talking at the same time. Mike Marin goes on to say, ancient swords from Saros and magical items from Tetronymus. The Smiths show up in museums. The immortal Shaper monsters from the Academy of Vu are wandering monsters, etc. And thank you very much for putting that in there. That's a perfect example of what I was going to say. Songs, monuments, rumors, locations, NPC family names can all be related to the player's actions. Many times we've played games where a game falls apart, life happens, we separate. When we come back to the game, we're like, oh, it's been 28 years later. And those characters are in our past, but then we bring those things up. Maybe that crypt that the players went into, that they excavated and got rid of the ancient evil, maybe now there's a community that built up around it and it's flourishing. You know, we've seen this classic thing happen at the end of how many animated and not so animated live action movies where the world is dead, the trees are blackened, the ground is red like blood, the sky is dark, the hero solve a thing, and guess what? There's butterflies all of a sudden. And heck, that damn thing happened at the end of when the Infinity Stones came back and the Hulk brought the half of the dead beings in the entire universe, brought them back to life. Yes, it was the Hulk who returned half of the universe's population back to life, and all of a sudden it was like the sun's shining and there's butterflies and flowers are blooming. Really? And thank you, Drew. I think my term flat storytelling sounds flat. It sounds negative, but in many ways, Sherlock Holmes is an example of a character who is very broad and told many stories, and he's a flat character. And I don't mean personality-wise. I mean the storytelling in each adventure in Sherlock Holmes has its ups and downs. It does the beats and draws, things like that. But Sherlock Holmes, as a whole, from the beginning of a career to the end of a career, tells a flat story. And they are essentially, James Bond is another one. Most superheroes are flat storytelling characters. If you ever notice, most comic book characters in graphic novels, movies, and books, what happens is there's a reboot. And the reboot is necessary because the spectacle creep keeps getting high. A perfect example is why Spider-Man almost invariably never stays on a superhero team. Because Spider-Man as a character remains and is best at his level. So when we play role-playing games and we play a game that goes 0 to hero, at a certain point, some of us unconsciously even go, yeah, my character concept and where we're moving from saving villages to nation states, to continents, to worlds, to planes of existence. This isn't fitting. There's a dissonance in my brain and I don't know what it is. Now, that unconsciousness can come across from being bored with a game and you don't know why. Sometimes it's where they fit in. For example, Spider-Man has always had the moniker Friendly Neighborhood and always taking care of Aunt May, and has family troubles, issues, juggling his responsibilities, as well as financial problems. Now, common sense would say Spider-Man is such a classic character. Why wouldn't he get a real job? He's smart enough and not have financial problems, takes care of his Aunt May he's smart enough to set up reasonable, after getting a real financially secure job, to set up ways to take care of her and be in constant communication and not have those issues. But his character is perfect in trouble. We don't worry about that with Captain America, who never seems to have a financial problem, has great housing, seems to have a pretty good relationship with the people in his life. He doesn't have financial issues. But Spider-Man, it fits for. Peter Parker is a character, and so this flat style storytelling, I think the OSR, whether we put voices to it or not, is like, no, I think I want to be a hard-bitten, blood under the fingernails, worn leather, helmet kind of tilted to the side with a sword with some chips in it, going to fight more evil for the 7th time in another realm, rather than now I have whirlwind, throwing lightning, backflipping, shattering the ground to kill 30 enemies in front of me in a nice large arc, right? Yes, could you get to that level in older versions of the game? Yes, but a lot of players are like, I kind of like having to worry about my food and water. I kind of like having to worry about diseases or those ghouls that are going to paralyze me, even though I'm 11th level and I'm still worried about. I mean, yes, I have a greater saving throw chance, but listen, if I roll a 6 or less on a d20, that's still a 30% chance. Do I really want to fight these ghouls? Not really. Come on, wizard, you got a blasty spell. Please take care of them, because I'm actually kind of scared, even though I'm a badass fighter. And I think that is one of the draws for the OSR. Thank you, Drew. Yeah, I think flat storytelling fits, at least for me. Let me get to, of course, all of your comments. That style is too flat. It's funny. Mike Marin says, ooh, NPC family names is a good one. Stealing that. Yeah, creating could you imagine players coming across NPCs that have the last names, adopted, actual biological, whatever, of people? Like, for example, I live here in Central Ohio, and the last names of Ebner, Lazarus, Wolf, Wexner, I'm trying to think of some others. Those are the ones that come off the top of my Russo. These are names that you find everywhere. Schottenstein, damn, how could I forget a Schottenstein? And they are leaders in industry here. Many of you who live in the flyover states here in the States, live in communities where 1 to 3 last names are on streets, schools, businesses. And if the kids and family have that last name, there's a little bit of like that legacy involved. Why not give that to the players? So Mike says, oh, NPC family names, that's a good one, stealing that. I've had a cleric turn saint. Create traditions and shrines in a later campaign, but there's no higher accolade than NPCs literally having their name. We have a real world religion that renames individuals that achieve a particular status, and you become Saint whoever. You become that person's name. And so, yeah, names, locations, even the titles of things. Like we call Vancian magic Vancian because of Jack Vance, right? Like there are actually actions we name after people because of a thing, which is kind of funny. Drew says, you are not wrong. It is a valid way to enjoy the hobby. It is just not for me. Now, mind you, I'm gonna slightly argue with you there, Drew. Like a procedural television show, it doesn't mean characters remain unchanged. What I mean is character capabilities and challenges don't increase in scope. So a medical drama television show can go 3 seasons, 8 seasons, 30 seasons, whatever, but the horrors they deal with, the injuries and sicknesses and illnesses they deal with, many times they don't keep expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. We've got to save 8 million people. No. It's still the same small hospital. Their skills can get a little better, but not very by much. But there is growth. Some characters are scared and they become bold. Some characters have family dramas that they solve. Characters become emotionally better. So in the OSR, characters do get better. Clerics become more powerful. Fighters get better with their weapons. But I think the overlap of weak and strong, if you had a circle of weak and a circle of strong, those circles overlap far greater in the OSR than in modern gaming, where there's like this small overlap of 2 circles, and weak barely touches the strong, and once you get to the second tier and third tier and fourth tier, those overlapping circles start to spread away, and third tier characters aren't even bothered by first tier threats at all. Whereas in the OSR, third tier characters still have threats coming from first and second tier, not as much, but they are still threatening. So Drew says Spider-Man can have depth too as well. I mean, often enough themes like responsibility get explored. It's not just the villain of the week every issue. Exactly. Which, thank you for bringing that up as well there, Drew. To prevent spectacle creep, oftentimes one of the great ways of getting around spectacle creep is to, instead of always a bigger, badder, big bad, it becomes more personal. It's not about saving yet village number 687, right? It's about saving your brother. It's about saving your family. It's about saving a rival that you've always hated, but then you realize it's not worth it. It's about dealing with personal issues. I'm watching one of my favorite shows on television was known as SEAL Team, and it's returned for its 7th season. And one of the issues of these badass soldiers, these are Navy SEALs, is that it's not, as the story progressed, it's not about them fighting bigger and better, nameless terroristic enemies. It's about, I've got PTSD. So I've got traumatic brain injury. I have family issues at home. Spider-Man is a perfect example of many of his elemental, animalistic, primal villains. If you ever look, they're always named after like elements or animals. Many of his enemies, one's not really more, they're not that much different than each other. I mean, yeah, they look different, they say a bunch of words, but they're all kind of like interchangeable. But what ends up happening is Spider-Man is given more, his difficulty in fighting the bad guy deals with his personal life. His Aunt May's sick, she needs medicine, my friends at school, responsibilities with job, paying a bill, higher education, hell, there's been a number of issues of Spider-Man where he's gotten the flu. He hasn't recovered from a last fight. His powers aren't working well because of some other issues, sometimes psychological, sometimes an interaction with a bad guy's beam from 3 comics ago or something. And so, yeah. Mike Marin says, agreed. Although under the same Marvel IP, the Punisher works better in isolation. The most popular runs of his comic are when he's in low fantasy. Yeah, sometimes characters, and I'm speaking for the unspoken, right? Where I could start out a game like Conanopolis, Hyperborea, right? We're going to do dark sword and sorcery. And I tell everybody, hey guys, get together, come on, make a character. And then we start using Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition as an example, or Tales from the Valiant, or Advanced 5th edition, or, Level Up Advanced 5th edition, or whatever game. And we start getting into 7th, 8th, 9th level, and then maybe this is something in the back of your head going, this felt more like Dark Sun in the beginning, now I'm feeling like Dragon Ball Z. I don't know. It's not. It's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Magic doesn't have any weird side effects. That's weird. You know what I'm saying? Like, so giving voice to these things, which is why I think people are being drawn to the OSR. And mind you don't need to play the OSR. I'm saying those games, I think, draw people in. Like, yeah, I like Magic to have weird side effects. I like having the food and water and the shelter of my character be threatened along with my hit points and sanity. And I don't need to save the world. If I just save the NPCs that are related to my character, maybe that's just enough. And making it personal for the players, friends, family, colleagues, ancestors, heck, players that have had children, have raised orphanages. I remember running a game and the players I described an orphanage randomly. It was just like, and on the outskirts of town, there's like this orphanage or something, and the players latched onto that damn orphanage, and I was just like, what? And then I had to change my mindset and go, no, that's where the adventure is. And they really took onto it, and then they started playing characters that graduated, aged out of the orphanage, and I was like, that's really cool. I didn't make it up. It was an accident that came about and created something really interesting. So, Mike Marin goes on to say, it is a similar vibe. Having allusions to a multiverse are fun, but making everything big and cohesive has diminishing returns. There is writers, those of us that are creators, it's weird how multiverse, time travel and multiverse, and they kind of are similar in storytelling tropes, are both exciting and painfully boring and annoying, because the spectacle of multiverse and time travel has no limit to how high it can go, as well as the fact that there are let's get back to our definition, right? It is from Urban Dictionary, and it brings up the two parts of the multiverse, and I'm going to add time travel in there, and that says that to try to keep things fresh and interesting, unwisely making everything bigger and better, this can lead to the feeling that everything up to that point didn't really have a point, or that everything after this point is pointless. So when we see the Flash, those who don't know, the Flash realizes that his mom is killed and his dad is blamed for it, and Barry Allen or other iterations of the Flash realizes this and decides to try to exonerate his dad. And in many iterations, Flash goes back in time to save his mom's life. Now, there was a movie, The Flash, or maybe it was just called Flash, where he goes back and ends up talking to his mom because he has to say goodbye to her. And some people said, well, why didn't he just go back in time and stop the killer? And unfortunately, that's what happens with multiverse time travel. It's like, well, couldn't you just undo it? Or go to a time period where this character exists because this other one got killed? Or go to a time period where someone solved the problem? So, and multiverse infinite time streams, branching timelines. It sounds fun, but from a writer's standpoint, it's like writing for Superman. It sucks because there's nowhere to go. The spectacle has gotten so high that there's nowhere to go. And when there are some people who are Superman fans, they're like, well, Superman's unbeatable. Great, okay, write me a story. No, write me 5 interesting stories that don't involve depowering Superman. Go. And some people say, well, you have to threaten him other than his powers. Great. Write a movie where it's exciting, where Superman does nothing but comprehend his existence. You know? Drew says, don't worry, I don't need growing threats either. It is for me about meaning, and I feel like the character development in the OSR is too hollow for me. Now, I will say that is a limitation. I was gonna do a video about the limitations of the OSR. The OSR doesn't really embrace. No, let me take this back. Let me reword this. Some OSR is about door kicking, right? A lot of it is about a backpack, a rusty sword, and door kicking. It's just, where's the loot? Kick in the door, steal shit, wash, rinse, repeat. Others have been starting to look at it like a fruitful void, meaning like we don't the OSR almost has 0 rules about social interaction, about emotional growth, about legacy, about meaning and duty and honor. Well, we are role players at the table. We're going to fill in those gaps. We don't need rules for that. We just need rules to figure out how we survived across this pit trap. But the rest of it, the interaction, the sitting down at the fire, around the campfire and telling our stories and making monologues and soliloquies, and what's another one? Monologues, soliloquies, reflections, things like that. Storytelling. No, we don't need rules for that. Now, there are many indie games that have rules for that, so maybe that's why that came about. But I'm speaking for the OSR, that there are some who go, well, we always added in like emotional elements to our games. We just never had rules for it. Yeah. I don't know, because Marin even brings it up and says, like, you know, do you think hollowness is mechanically driven? Like the OSR could use systems for changing flaws, bonds to promote growth. I think I don't think so. I think there are indie games that do that better. They have rule sets to do that better. Thirsty Sword Lesbians is a perfect example of that, which is why it's an award-winning game. Hey, Sable Phoenix says, I think if you're going to do a multiverse, Planescape is an example of how to do it best. I do agree with that. Yes, you can go literally anywhere, but you need the right key to do it. And when you're in Sigil, there we go. The physicality of the setting matters less than your belief, because your belief can actually influence solid matter. Not only that, the Planescape is pretty excellently written because it's a physical manifestation of alignment, and it's one of the best representations of the annoying alignment system, because I agree, players shouldn't have to fit into a rigid alignment system, which is where the drama comes from. Because everyone in Planescape is like, no, you need to fit into an rigid alignment system. Pick a side. Either you're for or against chaotic neutral, right? So, yeah, I agree with that. Drew says, not necessarily. I actually quite like the OSR. It's rather rules light and thus leaves room for a fruitful void. Yep. Sorry, I didn't get to that part ahead of time. Drew says, no, my issue is more that most OSR style are too focused on simulating the world, not dealing with thematic play. I agree with that. I agree with that more than a little bit. There are some games like Morkborg that are visually exciting, and they present a thematic element from the visuals that makes the gameplay interesting to me. But rules-wise, it's paper thin. If you really, because the rules in Morkborg, you can get them for free, by the way. If you go to Morkborg, they fit on the back inside cover of the book. And if you were to, I don't have it nearby. If you were to look at it, you could just photocopy it. You could read it in 2 days and memorize it. It's that light. Yeah. Yeah, Sable says it makes the personal stories immensely valuable. I agree with that. Drew says, like taking your Punisher example, I actually enjoy the stories more when he meets Daredevil and the protagonist and the pragmatism of Frank clash with the idealism of Matt. And that's where a lot of like Thirsty Sword Lesbians and other Powered by the Apocalypse games can kind of shine, because you're playing. The goal is to play to find out. The outcome of a thing is already almost prescribed in many Powered by the Apocalypse games. It's like, we are big damn heroes. We're going to win. We're going to win. How we get from zero to hero is the navigation of the story, and that's where many times we're drawn into, like Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. We don't say it, but a lot of times we are drawn in not by the sword fighting and the dragons, but by people talking in rooms and the emotional, social, political threats that are happening by people talking in rooms. And then the outcome of that is the physical what do you call spectacle of it, is the end result of all the people talking in rooms, right? But the real story happens in people talking in rooms. Yeah. Sable says, but why are you door kicking? There's got to be a powerful reason to risk your life confronting monsters and traps, and who knows what else when off chance you strike it rich. We talked about that before. There is, we have a show about that, about the why gold, like why was gold used as experience points, why were characters door kicking, and there is kind of a meta narrative in the OSR. Yes, many people just play the game just to door kick, but the meta narrative that was in the game was you were acquiring space that was there that belonged to humanity, and evil had taken it over. Those crypts didn't exist. The evil didn't create the crypts. Those crypts were historical elements from an age long ago. Humanity was gathering that territory back from being shrunk down to points of light. And so big damn heroes were traveling out into the darkness, leaving the points of light to go get the treasures to bring them back, so that it was to be brought back to build a better society. So the goal wasn't spent to make me rich, it was spent to build forts and temples and wizards towers and businesses and fortifications and libraries and things like that. So there was a meta narrative, but listen, you can't fit that on a meme pin, right? You get yourself an Amazon button and order it and customize it. You've got 38 characters. You can't fit all that on there. So it's just like, I door kick and collect XP, right? I mean, that's kind of what it boiled down to. Hey guys, funny. Yep. You guys are talking to each other. It's noon for you. Yeah. It's almost 7 a.m. for me. It bothers me. I love it. Our global embrace of the hobby and where we're at, literally by the spinning planet and stuff. Sable says, I think that a lot of the games with a predetermined ending, like say 10 Candles, can result in even more powerful roleplay experiences, even if beginning with the end in mind and leaning towards that might not be pure roleplay. The 4D crowd would certainly call it not roleplay. I agree. There's a game that I have that is a 2-player game called A Single Moment. Oh, hey, what's up there? Hey, what's up? There's a role-playing game I have called A Single Moment. I'll get to your comment there, Keith, in a minute. And the role-playing game is about 2 samurai who challenge each other on the battlefield and will kill either one or both of you will die. It's a 2-player game. And the game begins at the beginning of the duel, where they're both awaiting each other on a field of cherry blossoms in the wind, and the sun just about to rise or set on the horizon, and Each is barely moving their hands about to pull their swords, and then you start the game, and you flash back to scenes, building scenes of the two having these interactions with each other and NPCs that builds up to why this confrontation is happening. And you're building a dice pool as you go through each of these interactions of jealousies, hates, envies, backstabbing, hurt feelings, misunderstandings, miscommunications, and whatnot. And it ends with going back to the beginning of the game. We are going to assassinate each other. Both people roll their dice pools. There's a mathematical thing of figuring out who's the most honorable, who's the most angry, using all of those elements, and then you either kill each other, or one of them lives and the other one dies and gains their honor back, or whatever, and they are appeased. It is a mechanically setup game that tells you what the ending is. And there are some role-playing games. I've run role-playing games where I've told characters, no, every character dies at the end. Like, all of you have died. Like, imagine your character's already died. Now, let's start from the beginning and let's run through it. And you'd be surprised how interesting, what interesting choices people make when there's a predetermined outcome, and everything that happens from the moment you start play to the end, you can ride the rail, the roller coaster. Sable says, "Oh, that a single moment sounds a lot like Slay with me, at least in the fact you're building up the dice pool via narration." Yeah, it's like it uses a card. You don't have to use cards, but it basically uses, there's, I want to say, 8 to 10 objectives you're trying to achieve in your conversations, and you don't reveal them to the other player. And at a certain point, when you get your objective, you reveal to the other person what your objective was. And so that objective could be getting the other person to lie or cheat. It could be getting the other person to get angry. It could be getting the other person to agree with your position, or whatever. And it has a list of objectives. They're pretty general. And the first person to get there, boom, flips it over, and they go, "Oh, I get these dice from this dice pool." And you can decide, okay, well, I'm angry about that, so I want to collect dice, but those are my dark dice. I'm angry about that, and let it go. And you don't want to let it go because the other person's getting more dice than you. So to keep up, you're going to start getting more angry to keep more dice. And then the next scene happens. It could be 3 months later, and you set up another situation. And each person goes back and forth in creating the next situation. When is it? How is it set up? Who's involved? Blah blah. And then you open up the scene. All right, I'm traveling down the road, and your wagon is broken, and I see that you need help. In other words, I don't want to ask him for help. Damn it, I gotta get back to the daimyo, and I need his help to get back to the daimyo, but it's going to weaken my position, and I'm already pissed at him, but I gotta ask him, "Oh shit, well, can you help me move my goods and things?" And the other person's like, "Well, I could help you, but I see that you are far more capable of handling yourself." And then I ride off and let you sit there. You're like, "Oh, F you damn samurai," right? It's like, okay. And the person flips something over and it's like, "Hey, I got you mad again." It's like, "Damn it, you caught me. I knew it." That kind of thing. Hey, what's up, Keith? Just doing my tabletop role-playing thing here first thing in the morning. Probably popped up on, oh, you're coming across on YouTube. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, let me see if I can find a single moment. Okay, a single moment. TTRPG. And let's share this out. There it is. This is a single moment on Drive-Thru RPG. There's a soft cover and a PDF and a hardcover. Who wrote this? Is it Toby Abad? Yeah, And there's only three reviews, but anyway, yeah, it's a pocket game. It's maybe 6x9 and maybe 20 pages at the most. Yeah, Sable says that sounds awesome. Yeah, it's just something like that. Yeah, I want to thank you because if you're talking to Parker like that one day and you didn't encourage me to. Oh, you're very kind. Not necessary, but you're very kind. I really appreciate it. I don't know. I just maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe I just happened to be there for you. You know, maybe I was your blessing and I just happened to be a vehicle for it. I don't know. That could be it. So yeah. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for letting me do these 2 weeks of talking about OSR, old or original, S for school or system, and R for revival, renaissance, rules. There's a fourth one. But anyway, OSR gaming, back in the olden days, us old grognards and talking about it. And I just wanted to talk about spectacle creep, the growing threats, and how, without speaking it, I think some people are reflecting back into Shadow Dark, Knave, Cairn, some of these simpler rule sets. Listen, part of it, I'm not going to list all of them. Part of it is we have limited amount of time to read stuff. Other times it's, I mentioned the talk about the bullshit detectors. Like, maybe we just want to play with people who just get along. And some of these rules-like games are real easy to find out people who are embracing their narcissistic, spotlight stealing, asshole being behaviors, and rules-like systems really bring that out, and very easily, very quickly, very suddenly, instead of having 8 sessions with this person and then you start rolling your eyes, because you have to collaborate. Sometimes you have to come to a consensus on how you handle drowning rules, right? Like, is drowning different than choking? Is choking different than choking on smoke, different than being choked by a garrote or something? Is that different than a tentacle pulling you down underwater? Are those two different things? Is the tentacle pulling you down by the giant kraken different than choking and drowning underwater? I don't know. How are we going to handle this? And yeah, Sable says, hey, that's a good point I hadn't thought about. Yeah, bullshit detectors. Yeah, like I said, I'm putting words to a thing that maybe people aren't thinking about, but it's the argument of the toppings on pizza. We all know amongst coworkers that the ratio of toppings on pizza is inversely proportional to the number of people you're serving. And if you always get that one person that can't agree on what kind of toppings they want on the pizza, so they always order their thing off to the side, that's the person sometimes you don't want in your game. They're not a bad person. They just can't cooperate on our level. So when we get together on pizza toppings and that person goes, well, I'm vegan and gluten and I only like pizza from that one spot up in the far northeast of the city that, you know, cooks them in the stone forge, but they put down that cornmeal instead of the flour on the bottom, and you just gonna use I knew somebody Drew with the uppercut. Pineapple goes on pizza. I knew you were gonna go there. I knew it. I was letting you get there. But yeah, it's hilarious sometimes where there are some people that just can't. They can't compromise. You guys, it does go with pizza. You guys are hurting my feelings, I swear. Hey, we've got so many pizza places here in Central Ohio. The test market for fast food industry in the United States. It's a true thing. We are a huge test market. There's something called Abbott Laboratories and others where they actually test fast foods, and pizza happens to be one of those big things. Hawaiian is legit. You guys are digging your own holes. Oh man, you guys are going to slip off into the multiverse where all the pineapple on pizza goes. Then I'm just going to shove it there like Thanos with a glove. Oh man. Excuse me. I drink and I know things. Yeah, so I won't be delving into the OSR anytime soon. I did 2 weeks of it. That's 10 days. That's enough. That's like 12 to 15 hours of content. It's enough. But I just wanted to give some insight into what I think are the draws that the OSR is pulling. Now, mind you, there are indie games being made today that absolutely, Truce, please stop. I heard you the first time. That actually embrace little bits and pieces of what I've been talking about. And a number of these indie games are like, oh, well, this is what the OSR would be if I designed it today, right? So it's like writers and filmmakers doing a thing like, oh, well, if we modernize this thing, this is where I think it could be. Powered by the Apocalypse is a perfect example of an OSR design mentality, but a complete narrative embrace-iture. So Powered by the Apocalypse is rolling 2 dice, 6 dice, and 1 through 6 is kind of a failure, a setback, a downbeat. 7 through 9 is a complication. You kind of get what you want. You know, like 2 through 6 is you didn't really get what you wanted. 7 through 9, if you roll it on two dice, crap dice, are you get what you want, but you also get what you don't want. And 10 through 12 is you get what you want. And if you look at the bell curve of the numbers, for the most part, you always end up getting in the region of you get what you want, but you also get what you don't want. And you're so funny. Now I'm gonna have to order pineapple and Canadian bacon pizza for dinner tonight. Yeah. Oh no, you eat up. Just remember, the portal's gonna open up under your feet. Every bite is one more into the ritual to send all the pineapple over on cooked crust away from this multiverse. He's one that has the English-speaking world that has. Oh no! I'm not gonna pronounce that word because you just trapped me. You tried to trick me. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you very much for spending your valuable time. The economies are terrible. Money's tight around the world. Prices are going up, and so is our attention. It's valuable. So by spending your valuable time here, the only thing that I can hope for, I really do hope that I can give back change for yourself, your creation. I'm going to run something by you guys. Because these talks are long and wandery and squirrely, and they could probably be easily broken up into smaller sections a little bit. So I was thinking of doing like a 1 week or 2 week geek kind of thing. Maybe a 1 week geek where I ask people for I set up homework. Let's just do it. Let me describe it this way. Let me describe it the worst way possible. I assign homework, and the homework, this is just an example, could be world building. We love world building, and everybody loves it, even if we see too much of it. And the idea would be like a 1 week geek kind of thing, where I do this 5 days. So over 5 days, we say, hey, let's do something real simple. Let's break down criminal organizations, and all you need to do is come up with what does the criminal organization. This is your world, not mine, and this will be interspersed in each episode, like at the beginning and end, or somewhere in the middle, or something. And we say, hey, all right, criminal organization, 3 for your world. What is their specialty? And then the next day, your criminal organization, what are their assets? How do they, like, is it their influence that's an asset over politics? Do they have a lot of money? Is it blackmail? And then everything. And at the end of that week, you've created 3 great criminal organizations for your world. And then the next week, do another 1 week geek kind of thing over and over again, and eventually build that up. And then I can easily make little not just thumbnails, but like things that you can just click on and take for yourself to go, oh, hey, I haven't seen your channel before. What is this weak geek thing, stupid thing you're talking about? I couldn't come up with a good name. I had to pull that out of my ass and say, oh, no, we're just adding these up, and then you keep adding more and more and more and more and more and more, and we can start both actively building on the channel if we wanted to. We don't have to. And then people who are coming along can say, hey, I got like 6 weeks into this, and it's really helping me out. And then you guys can come to me and give me suggestions like, well, why don't you do like noble houses, or why don't you do space stations, or why don't you do alien races, or whatever? Because I like to do long form, and then people can jump in on the long form, and then maybe there's a little YOLO, like, I mean, there's a little FOMO, fear of missing out, not you only live one. There might be some FOMO, a fear of missing out, and then people can kind of go back and want to keep up with the channel and things like that. So I don't promote myself very well, and I was trying to think of something to give to people. So now that I've given that to you, I want you guys, that's your homework, to respond to me whether you think something like that would be a good idea. It doesn't have to be world building. I'm thinking of like back and forth that people could involve themselves in without having to really be here live. That's all. So guys, have a great one. I really need to be on a Discord server there. I hear you, Drew, and other places. And that actually might be the greatest place for me to post those things, because I can do it quickly and easily. I've already made my decision. That's what I'm going to do. And I could post it quickly and easily, and people could disseminate it as they wish, because it's going to be free, and tune back in, and things like that. So anyway, all right, guys, let's see, was this a good idea? Yeah. I'm inspired. I've always been inspired by like those 30-day challenges, and there was Dungeon 24. Like, yay, come be more active with Discord. Yeah. The Dungeon 24 was hashtag Dungeon 24, where people, like, each day you were supposed to build a room for a mega dungeon, and some of those seemed daunting. And I don't know if any of you have heard the term "how to eat an elephant." I was glad to do my homework. Yeah, the term, there's a term known as "how do you eat an elephant." And there is only one way to eat an elephant, and that's one bite at a time. And the idea is that sometimes we think projects are bigger than they need to be, and we are overwhelmed by the immensity of having to deal with a thing. But really, whether it's one of those teeth closed, pinky in the air, I'm eating at this restaurant that just gives me a small ounce of food, A-E-I-O-U, and sometimes, or you're eating an elephant, it still takes the same amount of energy. There's only one way to do it, and ignore the whole elephant. It just means one bite at a time. Yep. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Where does that come from? I'm going to find that. Sorry. Well, let's see. The quote, I'm going to share this out, because I've heard it many times. I know my grandfather shared it with me, and I don't know where it comes from. The quote, "There's only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time," is attributed to both St. Francis of Assisi and Desmond Tutu. The quote's meaning is that any task, no matter how challenging, can be accomplished gradually by taking on just a little at a time. Some say that the quote is a reminder to take things one bite at a time when faced with a seemingly impossible task or change. For example, Psychology Today says that people often try to eat the whole elephant in a single bite when they have a vague idea of what they want but no clue how to get it. Setting goals can be an important key to eating the elephant as it's meant to be eaten. St. Francis of Assisi? There's only one way to eat an elephant, attributed to notables ranging from St. Francis of Assisi, whose elephant-related credentials are a bit suspect, to be honest, to Desmond Tutu. The meaning is obvious. Any task, no matter how challenging, can be tackled bit by bit. Yeah. There's a, if I'm not mistaken, there is a special forces version of that, which is like, um, you. It's not defeat the problem one at a time. It's something like, um, what's the most important thing right now, and you go after that problem now, and then you go to the next one later, and the next one. And even though there's micro movements in a dangerous situation with gunfire and explosions and war, it's it's a constant need to solve the next problem one at a time. Yes, there's gunfire. Yes, we don't have bad communications. Yes, we have injured allies. Yes, we need to get from A to B. Yes, we need ammo. Okay, but what's the most important thing? We have injured people. Take care of them. Okay, we need to be in a defensive position so we aren't hurt anymore. Let's get there. Let's move there. Okay, now we need ammo. How do we do that? We need to set up communications. How do they know we're here behind enemy line? And it's one thing at a time. And I think in world building, we can get overwhelmed. Those of us that suffer from world builders disease suffer from this a lot. So, yep, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So slow is fast. Yeah. There's I take that to heart with my job, 32 plus years as a letter carrier, and our supervisors and managers are constantly telling us to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And the new employees hurry up so much, they make mistakes, get in car accidents, hurt themselves, drop things that delay them a lot. And the bosses start yelling at those new employees that are like, their nerves are frayed. And I always tell them, it's slow it down. You're gonna get the work done. Slow it down. It feels like your truck is full of mail. Every day my truck's full of mail. At the end of it, it's empty. And it feels daunting. You look at this thing and you're like, there's 175 packages plus the mail plus this and blah blah. Don't worry about it. What are you gonna do in the first 15 minutes of your day? Okay, do that. Oh, there's 3 packages, get rid of those. Oh, there's 5 more on the next street. Go ahead, get rid of it. Oh, there's a small business and they get 7 packages. Great. Okay, take those in with a dolly. Oh, you're parking on the street and doing a parking loop, and you're going into that apartment complex. Oh, great. Take the tub of mail in there, and the 5 packages they get in there. Okay, you got that done. Guess what? You just got done. Yeah. Yeah. It's not. Hey, it's not the bosses. It was all of those veterans, ex-military types that are being talked to by snot-nosed young wannabes, telling these people who serve their country that they ain't shit and they need to hurry up and do what I say. And those employees, that's how going postal happened, because the Postal Service is the second largest employer here in the United States, the first being Walmart. But prior to that, it was the largest employer in the entire United States. Well over something like 750,000 people, almost a million. It's close to it. And I think Walmart is just above that. Amazon's getting up there too, as a employer. And that's basically an entire population of people. That's a small city. That's a pretty big city of population of people. And in that population, when you mate a larger percentage of them are like, they served their country, they were in battle, they ain't trying to hear it from like a 27-year-old who thinks they know it all. Tell them what to do. So anyway, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for spending your valuable time. I hope I can make change for you and your tabletop role-playing experiences. Peace and out. Let's take you out with some nice globules here. See you guys.